had a great weekend. I hope you guys did too. So I want to talk to this week. We're going to be talking about hormones and all of the things that you may be struggling with and why insulin resistance is the number one hormone that's affecting it all. Good morning, everybody. So if you're struggling with things like PCOS, erectile dysfunction, weight loss, bloating, low energy, thyroid, hang out because we all know those things are linked to hormones, right? But did you know that the one hormone that links to them the most is insulin, and that insulin resistance is causing all of this and all of this? So hang out for a minute. We're going to talk about it, and I'm hopefully going to help you guys out. So I know there are a number of women who attend my lives who either have someone who has PCOS in their family or they've had it themselves, and they're struggling and frustrated and being put on medications that frankly are not working and are not really addressing the root cause, so they're never going to fix the problem. And so we want to stop all of that madness and actually get you some help and some answers. So how was everybody's weekend? I had a fabulous weekend, super busy, but I hope everybody's weekend was great as well. I hope y'all got to spend some time with your families, and I hope y'all are ready for Thanksgiving here in the U.S. because that's closing in on us quick. And with that, what if during these holidays, I hear people talk about, the struggle with the food and how to eat during the holidays. What if there was a simple system that made it so that you could just enjoy your family and not worry about that? We're going to talk about that in a little bit too, because it's helped so many people with insulin resistance. So look, insulin is a hormone and it's a primary hormone. I'll dive into why we have insulin resistance and what's causing it later on if anybody wants me to explain that, and I will anyway, because you need to understand what's happening so you can understand how it gets fixed. But insulin is a primary hormone, meaning it has precedence over all the other hormones. So when we talk about testosterone, estrogen, even your thyroid hormones, insulin is really the guy in control of all of those when it comes down to it. If your insulin is leveled, then you have a better chance of having those normalized as well. Now, there's other things that could cause those to go wrong. Hey, Janice. But if insulin is bad or high, or you're resistant to insulin, you're going to have problems with all the other hormones. It just is what it is. So let's dive into all of that. Does anybody here currently have PCOS or erectile dysfunction and want me to explain why this links in and how you can overcome it without all the medications, without all the struggles? Ladies, if you've had PCOS, you're getting hair on your face, you're losing hair on your head, you have acne, you have weight gain, you have painful and extended periods, you're being told you can't have kids or it's going to be very hard for you to have kids. Anybody in here that feels like that, type of 1? Or if you know somebody, maybe you have a daughter, a sister, or somebody who's been told that they have PCOS and they're struggling. Like, I can't tell you how many. I remember in Boise, Idaho. I lived in Boise for a while. I'm in Maryland now. But there was a young woman who was gorgeous, like a cheerleader, all of these things, and all of a sudden she started gaining weight and she couldn't get rid of it, and they told her that it was PCOS and she had become extremely obese. No matter what she did with, or she felt like what she did with her dieting, she just wasn't getting better. Okay, I have a couple of ones, so we're going to dive into it. So it makes me sad now because she was told there was nothing that could be done. And she was struggling and she was embarrassed as a late teen and early 20s person that she had been so fit and so had such a great body and was active and she was doing all the things, but she just could not lose weight, and the PCOS seemed to be taking over her life. So let's go over it a little bit, okay? I'll do some videos later this week in depth, but I want to just kind of give a high level or a mid-level explanation. All right, so we all know with PCOS that women have a cycle and that our ovaries have a big part of that cycle, right? So there's more than just estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and a lot of people forget DHEA in our sex hormones. For ladies, we have luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. So during our cycle, we have this hormone that gets put out early in our cycle. Our estrogen is low, and it's called follicle stimulating hormone. That's what tells our bodies to put out these eggs that are going to grow to hopefully be fertilized so that we can have children. And that's also part of what's causing our cycle, right? Estrogen is low and then it gets higher throughout the cycle. So here's what happens as those eggs start to grow, then one of them becomes what the body considers as viable. Like, this is the one. If we have a chance this month, this is the one. And so it sends a message to the body, and you start having more estrogen, and that estrogen helps your body produce luteinizing hormone, which then that hormone, or LH, is taking all the eggs that are not like the strong one, and it's dissipating them. So there, it's kind of like dissolving them and having them go away, and it gets pushed out through the body, and the one egg that's really good stays strong, and it's there for us to get fertilized. So with insulin resistance, what's happening is when we have insulin resistance, it's giving cues to the ovaries to not produce estrogen. And why? So why do we have the hair loss? Why do we have the excess hair and the hair loss and all these other things? So what you need to understand, and this is going to be important for the guys too, all hormones start out as androgens. So think testosterone. And in women, our ovaries convert that testosterone into estrogen. Okay. With insulin resistance, it's stopping that production from testosterone into estrogen. So now, when the body's needing that excess estrogen, when your body needs the estrogen to go up, so you can have all these other factors happen in your body, it's not able to go up because it's not able to convert it from the testosterone. So now you have chronically high testosterone levels, hair on your face, receding hairline, weight gain, maybe some aggressive behavior, sleeplessness, all of that. So now you have excess testosterone, and you just are not able to produce enough estrogen because insulin is stopping that conversion. Now, in your ovaries, instead of getting this luteinizing hormone to come down and dissipate those eggs, there's no cue for that to happen. So those eggs are just all kind of hanging out. And when we think of the word poly, so the word is polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. Poly means many. So remember, your body's going to push out a whole bunch of eggs in 1 month for you to have, hopefully have one that grows up. That your body never just pushes out one egg. But now these ones that are kind of dying off, or should be dying off, and and letting this one that's viable be out there to produce a child, these ones are kind of hanging out, and they finally start falling, and they land in the lining of your ovaries. So many eggs landing in your ovaries, and they cause cysts, because as they kind of embed in the tissues in the ovary, it starts to create these little pockets of infection of these dying eggs, and so it's polycystic, and it happens in your ovaries, ovarian syndrome. But it all starts with insulin resistance. Now, so now your period is longer because your body isn't cueing when it should be done and when that egg should be ready for release, and you're having a hard time conceiving because of all of this, and your periods are painful and they're super heavy, and you have these cysts in your ovaries, and it all started with insulin resistance and not just your hormones. So with the PCOS, how many of you guys have also been told that it's just genetic, that there's nothing you can do about it? Maybe you've been given some dietary help. Maybe you've been, I've heard lately people being put on Ozempic for it. You guys, I'm going to be clear on this channel, I am not a proponent for those medications. There's enough science out there that shows how damaging they are to people, and they're not fixing the root cause. So, PCOS. I've had so many women who get their insulin under control, their periods get back to normal, they're having children. Some of them, I've been doing the protocol I'll talk about for about 2.5 years. One of the gals started about 6 months after me. She had irregular periods. She was devastated because she wanted to have a family, and she was told she would never have a family. And within a month of starting the system, her first month, she had a regular period. The second month, she had another regular period. And the third month, she didn't have a period. And so she was devastated. She was like, I thought this was working. What's going on? Well, as it turns out, by month 3, she had gotten pregnant and now has a baby that's a little over a year old. So, and I had PCOS when I was younger, and I was told I would never have children. And so I called both of my children Immaculate Conception, like my gift from God, because I was told it would never happen. I was in the doctor's office about twice a month just trying to figure out how I could conceive and have children. So we're going to go over that. I want to explain how this happens really quick, and then that will make more sense as to how we lower it. My background, by the way, I did see that comment. I worked in doctor's offices and in a hormone clinic specifically for a number of years. But more importantly, when all the doctors couldn't help me, when all the doctors weren't addressing this, when all the doctors told me that I was always going to be fat and sick, and that my life was going to be shortened from it, and that there was nothing they could do for me outside of prescribe me medications that may help, I found this way on my own and took care of my insulin resistance, my diabetes, my hypertension, my hyperlipidemia, a number of other things. My hair is growing back in, my eyesight's gotten better, my teeth have stopped bleeding. All of these things have gotten better for me because of the system, and I've studied with or listened to the physician, doctor, not the physician, Dr. Benjamin Bickman, who wrote the book Why We Get Sick. I was actually able to meet with him. And so I've done a lot of work over the last 2 years to understand why I went from where I was, which sounds like a lot of you guys, to having my health back. And so now I talk about it every day to help other people get better. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm simply a woman like all of you people, women or men, who are out there struggling with their health and trying to find a way to get better and not getting help through the medical system. I actually listened to a doctor the other day who said doctors are not taught this, and they're not taught to talk about this in medical school, and that's why we're not getting it addressed. And yet when we address it, and some doctors are starting to learn, it's getting better. Sure. So Nisha and everyone else who asks about PCOS, let's understand this. Um, Insulin resistance is a food-borne disease or disorder, okay? So what's happening is we're eating food and we're eating food that converts to sugar too quickly. So we want to break this down. When we eat, it's a source of energy for our body. When we eat, it's not supposed to be a pleasure center like reward. It's supposed to be that we're giving our body the nutrients and the energy it needs to survive and do what it's doing. There's something like 32 billion billion processes going on in the body every second. That takes a lot of energy. So we do need energy, but what's happening is that we're eating this food because it's been modified. It's been stripped of nutrients like fibers and phytonutrients and minerals and vitamins and enzymes and proteins so that our bodies can deal with those more naturally. It's been stripped. And why? Because we want bigger, better, juicier, sweeter food all the time. We were not meant to have the kind of food that we're having now. And it's not just the packaged boxed foods. It's even happening with our organic and raw foods. So a peach, where's my favorite thing? A peach used to be about the size of this, and now it's bigger than the size of my fist. How did we go from this to this? Well, we stripped out all of those nutrients. And the biggest one most doctors are talking about now is fiber. Remember, fiber is key to all of this because fiber helps slow down the absorption of the sugar that's converting from your food into energy in your body so that you're not getting the insulin spikes. So let's take a step further back. When we eat, it's energy, right? So we eat this food, and through this whole process from the mouth to the butt, our body is simply taking that food and breaking it down and turning it into energy and pulling out all the pieces that we need to survive and live. So along the way, a lot of the foods have been pre-broken down for us. So smoothies, you guys, the smoothies everybody likes to live on, and I do it too. I do some shakes once in a while because I just need to get nutrition in on some days. But those are pre-broken down, and so now you have sugars that are going to your system too quickly. So energy in your system is called glucose. Some people call it blood sugars. So when your body has more than 1 teaspoon of this energy in your system, it's going to cue the pancreas to produce insulin. And why insulin? Insulin is a hormone, but insulin is the thing that carries the energy. The energy goes from the bloodstream, and it gets carried to every single cell in the system for the energy that you need. So insulin is extremely important. It's why we have diabetes type 1, because they cannot produce insulin. But for those of us who are diabetes type 2, which I'm no longer diabetic type 2, we have too much insulin and the cells are becoming resistant to it. So think about your cells being like, say like you're in a huge apartment building, and you have this one neighbor that keeps going around knocking on all the doors of all the neighbors, trying to gossip and trying to just get in the cell, and the neighbors are all like, I don't want to hear from you anymore, you're so annoying, I'm not opening this door because I know it's you. That's what our cells in our body feel like when we deal with insulin. Insulin is knocking on the cell doors too often because we have too much energy in our system too often. So now the cells are like, oh, I don't want to open up. I took energy from you yesterday, I took energy from you earlier this morning, I'm not letting you in anymore. I'm done. I'm just done. The only problem is that even when the cells need energy, they're so annoyed at insulin that they're not letting it in. And this then becomes insulin resistance, where our cells cannot take up the insulin that they need, which is actually the key that opens the door to let the energy in. Insulin is a saver, and it carries the energy to the cells. So if the cells won't open their doors to insulin, the energy that we're eating can't get inside the cells. What happens then is it starts storing it, and our body has this amazing storage unit, and it's called our fat cells. We have two different types of fat cells, white and brown fat. So the white fat's the stuff on the outside that's jiggly and ugly. Nobody likes it, but it's not particularly harmful, although it's doing a lot of things inside your body. We'll talk about in a little bit. The brown fat is underneath your muscle wall of your gut, and it's what makes you have the distended belly. It's what can cause what they call a fat tongue and cause sleep apnea. It causes all of those things. But with insulin resistance, not only is your body storing fat, but there's a center in your brain called the hypothalamus that then cues the body to store more of the visceral fat, the fat underneath the muscle wall. Well, that fat is there, supposed to be there, because it has mitochondria in it. That's why it's brown. It has energy in it. So it's warm, and unlike the fat on the outside, but it's meant to cushion and warm our organs. But with this misfiring, we're putting too much of that in underneath the muscle wall. Now we're having problems with fat impacting our heart, our liver, our kidneys, our ovaries, our intestines, our stomach, and it causes all kinds of problems. So if we understand that the two biggest reasons this is happening to us is because we're eating too often. So if anybody's heard that you should eat every 2 hours to keep your metabolism high, and you want me to explain why that's the wrong thing to do, science says it's the wrong thing to do. The people who are telling you to do it every 2 hours have not read the scientific papers that would tell you don't do that. Okay, so there is no reason for us to eat every 2 hours, and it's actually killing your metabolism. So we're eating too often. And by the way, scientists studied, and the people who were told to eat every 2 hours and are trying to do that, like eating every few hours, are eating up to 16 times a day. So remember, when you put energy in your body, you're eating, you're increasing your blood sugar, which increases your insulin. So if you're doing that 16 times a day, why would you have a problem with insulin? Okay, so fibers have been stripped from our food. 45 carbs. It depends, Nisha. It depends. We're going to go over a few things. If you're highly insulin resistant, that's probably too much carbs in a day. So that looks like 135 carbs in a day if you're eating 3 meals. And then if you're snacking, that's even more. So there are a lot of people who keep it below 20 carbs a day to get their insulin resistance reversed. I didn't have to do that. I don't actually count carbs. I'll show you the simple way that I do this, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But I want you to understand there's one superhero or superfood that we're missing, and that is the key to all of this. So that superhero superfood is called fiber. And why we're getting sick is because it's been stripped out of all of our food. Why fiber? Every fiber in our food has a different action. So the fiber from apples is going to react but differently in the body from oranges or from green peppers or from um, beans or any other fiber. So every fiber in every food has a different action in the body. Some fibers help feed your well, all fibers help feed your probiotics and your microbiome in your gut, but some of them are helping you clean out, so poop. Some of them are helping you regulate your sugars. And there's three specific fibers that help you slow down the delivery of sugars into your intestines, where it then gets into your bloodstream. So it's important to get in a variety of fibers. Some of them will cause this gel-like action in your gut where they expand and they start to help you feel full, so you're not overeating. It's like, what can I think of? Anyway, I'll think of an analogy later. I have never thought of that one. But so the other thing I want you to understand before I hop into what the solution is, if we know that fiber has been stripped, if we know that we're eating too often, we understand that we need to do some intermittent fasting and we need to slow down the eating. We need to put the fibers back in that have been stripped out, so it slows down the delivery of sugars into our bloodstream, or the breakdown of food and delivery into our bloodstream, so that we can have a more normal insulin level. So with the intermittent fasting, why intermittent fasting? Why is that so important? When we look at our hormones, here's what's happening in your body. So when you eat, it actually takes about 2 hours after you have your last bite of food before your fasting window starts. Okay, we're just going to count from the time you last eat. So we're going to go over maybe why in just a second, okay? So intermittent fasting alone can work for some people, but it doesn't work for everyone, because again, the key is going to be fibers. And then also there are some other vitamins and minerals that are key that you might not be getting in, that are probably happening. So if you're not sleeping at night and not losing weight, you're still having an insulin problem. Again, the intermittent fasting, if you're not fixing the food that's going in, is only going to do so much, okay? So you eat food. About 2 hours later, your fasting window starts. It takes about 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours, for your blood sugar levels to actually normalize after you eat your food. Now, insulin is going to be present in your body as long as it thinks that you're putting sugar in your body. And what we're doing when we eat so often, we eat food that converts too quickly, we're training our body to be ready, right? So it's on the ready. So it says, I'm going to need to keep this insulin high because this person is eating all the time and they're eating all this food that's converting to sugar, and we can't have that in the bloodstream because that's damaging. So insulin, you got to stay out here and take care of this. But remember, insulin's a primary hormone. So the other hormones that we need to do things like burn fat can't come out as long as insulin is at play, because it's now like a bully on the playground. So insulin likes to save energy. So it's doing all this work to take this energy that's converted and save it. And there's a component hormone called glucagon that's really important in your metabolism, and it likes to burn energy. So this one that likes to burn energy, well, it can't come out to play until the one that wants to save energy goes to bed, because otherwise this one says, heck no, I just stored all this energy. You're not going to come out and burn it all. So we've got to get insulin down. How do we get insulin down? Stop eating all the time. So it takes about 8 hours after your last bite of food before your insulin levels start to drop. If you're highly insulin resistant, it could be 10 to 12 hours before that starts to drop. 2 hours after your insulin drops, then your body goes, oh, okay, we're not utilizing insulin anymore. Well, glucagon, we need you. Glucagon comes out to play because now it's safe. Insulin's been down for about 2 hours, and glucagon comes out and says, what can I burn up? What can I use? Because the body needs some energy. So it starts going to all your fat cells and pulling your fat cells out. It starts helping you produce human growth hormone and ketones, which are the little messengers that says, hey, we need fat because we need energy. So it's breaking down the fat and restoring it into your bloodstream as energy, so you now have energy. You've been insulin resistant for so long. You've been on Ozempic for 2 years, barely eat and still do not lose. Yes, Ozempic does increase your insulin. And yes, it does make you more insulin resistant, because if you're already insulin resistant with what your body normally produces, then you're starting to have more insulin resistance go on. So stomach acids and all of that get changed as well. So one of the things, let me finish this and I'll come back to the stomach acids part. So if we know that fibers have been stripped and that we're eating too often, so now I was on glucagon, right? Glucagon, when it comes out, it's wanting to burn fat. Insulin prevents fat breakdown, it prevents fat burning, and it encourages fat storage. Glucagon burns fat. So we have to get the glucagon out. So that could be 10 hours after your last bite of food before glucagon starts to come out. Now, after glucagon starts to be produced in your body, it takes a minute. It takes a minute. This isn't like flipping a light switch, okay? So now glucagon is out, and in about 12 hours, your digestive system goes, okay, they're not putting more food in. I'm going to start to reset. I can start to clean up a little bit. I can start to change the enzymes and stuff that are, I'm not going to be inundated with sugar anymore. I'm okay now. And so your digestive system starts to reset. And then you start to have this fat burning mode going on. So about hours 14 to 16, you're now in this mode where you can actually burn fat and utilize the energy that you have stored. Oh, and Mounjaro is just, okay, so you guys, Mounjaro, Ozempic, Trulicity, all those are GLP-1 agonists. All of them are in similar fashion making you produce more insulin, okay? All of those GLP-1 agonists are creating a system in your body where it's telling your pancreas to produce more insulin. So if your pancreas is already producing too much, can anybody guess what's happening when you're telling your body to produce more insulin than it's already able to produce? So if you put yourself on a treadmill and you ran and you're like, okay, at 2 hours I'm tired, but somebody was standing behind you with a electric stick saying, no, you're going to keep running, and it kept you running and running and running even after your legs are tired and you're exhausted and you want to sit down because you're just tired. Eventually you're going to start to have problems, right? So that's kind of what we're doing to our pancreas. We're making it produce more insulin than we need, and that's a problem. Plus, if you haven't read, there's tons of lawsuits going on right now against these GLP-1 agonists because people are losing their gallbladders because it's putting this load on your liver, and you're also creating that liver and the gallbladder are attached together. So now you're starting to have gallbladder problems. If you take that, it wouldn't cause you to be diabetic. Nisha, if you're doing Ozempic, what they're hoping for is for your numbers to go down. So they're really not addressing the root cause. They're just concerned with the numbers. And the numbers they're concerned with were the A1C, your blood glucose, your triglycerides. They're just trying to get those numbers down. That's all they care about. Are they saying this is going to fix this? No, they're not. Are they saying that all the other things in the body that are happening wrong? No, no. They're just worried about those numbers. Because if they can get those numbers down in their charts, and I worked in medical clinics for years, in their charts they can say your numbers are down. And then, oh, but you're having these other problems? Okay, we'll just give you another medication to take care of that other problem. Okay, so what we're doing, what I did after I had been given metformin, I would never do Mounjaro, Ozempic. I was like, metformin was it. I'm like, I'm not doing medications. I don't believe in them. I had 2 family members who worked for Big Pharma. And I worked in the medical clinics and saw Big Pharma come through and sell us drugs and all of that stuff, or try to. I had some doctors who would let them come in, and some doctors who were like, nope, you're not walking through my doors. I now understand why. Okay. So if medication isn't the issue, is medication isn't the cure. So we also want to look at the fact that this is a dietary disorder, right? So we're not getting enough fiber and we're eating too often, and the food that we're eating converts into sugar too quickly. That's a dietary problem. How are those drugs fixing your diet? They're not. They're not fixing anything about the energy that's coming into your system. They're not fixing any of that. They're masking a problem, and then they're hoping that your numbers are going to go down. So in their books, they can write it off. Sorry, I'm going to be really blunt. Okay, can I be really super blunt right now? And then I'm going to go into the protocol that I use that is not causing all of those problems. Dr. Bickman, the brilliant man, one of the top metabolic scientists in the world, wrote this book, educates doctors on diabetes and these medications, and the doctors giving their type 2 diabetics insulin. Okay, so in the nuts and bolts, after he shows them all the science of why that's a flawed approach, then he tells them this. He says, by giving, thank you, Jeffrey. He tells them, by giving your patients insulin, you're doing three things. You're making them fatter quicker, because insulin is a fat storage hormone. And by storing more fat, you're keeping your numbers down, right? So their numbers look good on paper, but now you're storing more fat. You're making them fatter quicker. You're making them sicker quicker, because insulin resistance leads to all of this, and you're killing them quicker. And he's literally had doctors come up to him in tears when they understand the science, which is not something I can explain, because I'm not the scientist that Dr. Bickman is. But when he explains the science to them and he tells them this, he's had doctors come to him in tears and say, you mean all these years I have been killing my patients? And he says, yes. Now, this same man who's going around the nation educating doctors on metabolism and what really works and what doesn't, had a part in creating the protocol that I use. Amazing man. But he also says this about Ozempic, Trulicity, Mounjaro, all of that. When I got to meet with him, about 50 of us got to sit down with him for several hours, and he explained all of this stuff to us. And he was asked directly, what would you tell someone who is considering Ozempic, Mounjaro, all of those things? And he said, tell them never to do it. It's going to cause damage to their body. And he said, if they're on it, tell them to get off of it as quickly as they can. Of course, you have to work with your doctor to come off of them, but you guys, it's about the fiber. It's not about making you produce more insulin. It just is not. That's not the cure. Into fiber. So what Dr. Bickman helped produce is, and I got to find the other one, a system that we use now, and it's so when we talk about intermittent fasting, a number of us are having problems with. So this tea that I drink in the morning, which is what's in this big old mug of mine, helps me when I'll get to that in a second. Remind me, Gen X, about type 1 and Ozempic in a minute. It's called LADA, latent onset diabetes. But let me finish this and then I'll talk about that. So you're hypoglycemic, likely because you're insulin resistant. So I coach you through how to help with that. This has helped my blood pressure immensely, and we'll talk about all those things in a second. So this tea I drink in the morning, it helps me feel full. It's helping me burn fat for fuel. So now I don't need energy. My body's not hungry because it has energy from me burning fat for fuel. My insulin is down, my glucagon is up, I'm more metabolically flexible. My body says I can be a fat burner now. And so the tea helps with all that and does not break my fast, assists it. But because I'm burning fat for fuel, I'm not hungry. I'm not having those issues, and it gives me mental clarity and energy. This was actually developed as a mental health tool. It's just a tea from Argentina. They call the food of the gods down there. So I drink that. make it through a 16-hour fast. I had dinner at 6 o'clock last night, so I'm now 15 hours into a 16-hour fast. By the time I'm done with this, I'll have about a half an hour, 45 minutes to go, and I could eat if I want to. So before I eat, I'll just have my fiber matrix, which is a pre-meal drink that I have 10 minutes before I eat anything. I just put it in about this much water, shake it up, drink it down, wait 10 minutes. Those fibers are going to get into my gut. They're going to expand. So I start to feel full before I ever eat. It starts to create this thick gelatin mass, which then, as I do eat, the food that comes in sinks into that gelatin mass. It slows down how quickly it goes through my digestive system. So it takes a high glycemic food and, for all effects and purposes, makes it a medium glycemic food. So it's helping slow down those sugar spikes, which helps slow down the insulin spikes. One packet of this can help slow an insulin spike by 13%. Excuse me, I had something in my throat. And 2 packets can produce a reduction of insulin by 28%. Because it's food, you can have more than the 2 packets a day. You're sensitive to psyllium. I believe there's a little bit of psyllium in here, but that's not the main action of the fiber. Kaya, what I would say is this. There's a 90-day money-back guarantee with the system. What I would do is try it. I've had some ladies whose guts were not strong enough in the beginning because we're not used to having fiber, who started out with like 1/8 of a teaspoon and they just kept working their way up until they were drinking a full packet. You can try it. And oh, I'm going to show you right where to get them, Nisha. So we're going to take a look at that. So tea in the morning, fiber before I eat anything, and then that's for 2 times a day, right? So and then I do some intermittent fasting. That helps keep my blood sugars down. It helps slow down the delivery of that into my system. But it has a complete vitamin and mineral panel in it for metabolism. It has phytonutrients that are good for heart health, and we're going to come back to all those questions in a second. So, all right, so you guys, if you're ready, why am I saying so, like I'm a seamstress or something? I was for years, you guys. I actually was a designer and a seamstress for years. Crazy stuff. I feel like I've had the most amazing, wonderful, crazy life. I've gotten to see and do so many things, and I'm so very thankful for it. All right, so. If we go to tap on my profile picture up above, and that's going to bring up a box below. And when that box comes up, you're going to see this. Here you'll see the red lights, and you're going to click on this link. That link is going to take you to my landing page with something like this. At the very top, there's the system that I use. And so we're going to go into that, but there's a whole bunch more information here, all the other platforms I'm on, an ebook that I have that you can download on the 6 simple steps, which I haven't gone over yet. But let's go to the order. We're going to go to the order page. And here's the key, you guys. Please do not go to Walmart, eBay, any of those places, Amazon, to buy this. There are no authorized distributors on those platforms. If you buy from there, you are not getting the guarantees and you're not getting the coaching. Okay? So if you want the coaching, if you want the help, you've got to buy from someone who's reputable like me. And then you see my name there, and then you just click on the buy now button. It's going to be stacked in if you're on a phone, and you're going to get this. 30 of the tea and 60 of the balance. So the complete system for about $5 a day. You do get to choose between flavors. They right now have the lemon ginger highlighted. Look, if you don't like ginger, I would suggest you start with the lemon. And then I would leave it. So the lemon, ginger, and black. Those are the tea flavors. You can have them hot or cold. That's the one you're going to have in the morning. I buy extra of the tea because to have it throughout the day, because I know that it's helping my brain, it's helping my body, and it's giving me a ton of nutrients. So I just use it as my drink of choice, or water. I usually have about 3 drinks on any given surface at any given time. All right, then the pre-meal drink has a light orange flavor to it. So it's like, some people call it an orange Julius. Some people say like a light creamsicle. That one you want to drink really quickly. One-time purchase is $159 US. You save $5 by doing the subscription, so that now makes it $154. Plus, you get free delivery when you do the subscription, and you get this free hand mixer. So that's a gift the first time, and you get the bottle that I showed you earlier with your first system. So that's where you're going to get it. Let me drop a link for you guys over here on Facebook. And then we're going to talk some more. So I know there was blood pressure questions, right? There was some other questions I need to come back to. So I just put the link in there. So you guys, again, Dr. Bickman, you know what's crazy? He's such a good guy. He doesn't work for our company anymore, but because he went out on his own, and he still is a teaching doctor at Brigham Young University, and he goes around educating other doctors on all this stuff. So let me get my life back in order here. Uh-oh. I somehow lost myself. There we are. Okay. So blood pressure. 95% of high blood pressure is caused by insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is the key contributor to high blood pressure. So, Nisha, you guys, let me answer these couple of questions, and then I'll come back to the blood pressure. But my blood pressure was 180/150 at any point during every day, and the lowest we could get 50/110. It's now, I wake up every morning with it at 112/74, and I'm not on any medications. I haven't filled any prescription in 2.5 years. No, you did not miss me talking about stomach acid, Joy. We haven't gotten there yet. So the ingredients to the tea, if you guys go back to my link, there is my website there, and all the ingredients are listed. The caffeine in it is naturally occurring caffeine. And can we talk about caffeine for a second? It's naturally occurring, and it's about the same or less than a cup of coffee. There are 3 components in the tea called adaptogens. So I want you to visualize this. They first of all, the locals who grow it call it morphine and not caffeine, because these 3 adaptogens change how the caffeine works in your body. So here's a caffeine molecule, and then we have these 3 adaptogens. They mediate how that caffeine acts in your body. So now you're getting energy. It's not harming your heart. You're not getting that throw me up against the wall and drop me on the floor kind of feeling. You're not getting the jitters. You're not getting the crash. You're not getting all of that. 3 things: chlorogenic acid, theobromine, and mate saponins help mediate that. So you get the energy without the negative side effects. And you guys, when I started, my blood pressure was so high, I was like, what are you doing? Because I wouldn't drink coffee or any of that because I was so terrified about my blood pressure. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm scared, but I've got to do something, and it doesn't make sense to me, but I'm going to try it. In 6 days, this wasn't planned, but I got my system. I'd already had a doctor's visit planned. So I think I got it on a Sunday. On a Thursday, I had a doctor's visit, and I went in, and the MA read my blood pressure at 126/84. There had never been a blood pressure in my chart under 150/110 prior to that. I squealed like a little girl in the doctor's office. I had my doctor come in, who is also a close friend. I was like, "Did you look at my chart? Did you actually read my, because they don't read your vitals all the time. Just be honest, they don't read them all the time." So she looked, and she was like, "What?" And she made the MA come back in because she thought he had made a mistake. She made him do the blood pressure with her in the room, and it was still like 126/84. And she just looked at me and was like, "What the heck did you do?" Okay. So this helped my blood pressure. Now, it took about a year for my blood pressure to normalize, but it's now normalized, and that's all good. So stomach acids. There's a couple of things going on. When we don't have enough fiber, our stomach acids get off. But part of what's happening with insulin resistance is this. When you have all of that fat impacted in and around your stomach, and your intestines and all of that, there's also this thing going on where insulin resistance is creating some miscues in your nerves. Okay, so instead of, you have these nerve fibers, instead of them communicating, because they're like one nerve is giving a message to the other nerve and they're talking back and forth, now all of a sudden those messages are kind of coming out the side. So this message is going out here into space somewhere, but it's not connecting to the other nerve ending. And so you start having some paralysis of sorts. So this is what happens with your gallbladder, and partly what's happening with your liver and your kidneys, and a number of other things. So with your stomach, insulin resistance or diabetes can cause what's called gastroparesis. So that is when your stomach starts to freeze up. Those nerve messages aren't happening, and so your stomach is not able to contract like it once used to. So now, instead of it passing acids through the stomach, it's holding them in the stomach and they're bubbling back up into your esophagus. So your stomach is not contracting the way it should. Are you really having too much acid, or is your stomach just not contracting and getting rid of it? That would be a good question, because both could be. But if it's insulin resistance, it's just that your stomach is not contracting and moving stuff around. So now all that acid is sitting in your gut, and it's then coming up as acid reflux, and you're ending up with ulcers. So I had acid reflux and I had ulcers when I started. I used to drink the pre-meal drink alone, because instead of doing Tums and some of those things that are damaging, I would just drink this, because when it gels up and coats my stomach, it would help with that acidic feeling in my stomach. If I started feeling high acids, I would just drink this and it would help calm that down and soothe it in the beginning. I don't have to do that now because I rarely have those stomach acids unless I get a hold of some foods that were really bad, like the seed oils and all of that. So, okay. So guys, it's just a simple system. It's real food. But one thing I haven't talked about, there's a 90-day money back guarantee. What I want you to know is I want everyone to try it, because look, it has a 90-day money back guarantee. If it works for you, it works for you, and there's no reason it shouldn't if you're consistent with it. But if it doesn't, you get your money back. It's not a medication that's damaging you. It's a food system that's actually giving you back what's been stripped out, so your body can recognize the food that we're eating and your body can do things more normally. So if you're sensitive, like this, there was a psyllium husk sensitivity. I don't know if I don't have an answer for that one per se. It takes about 3 to 5 days typically, Joy. We have distribution centers throughout the world. We're in over 34 countries. If you're here in the US, we have one in Vegas and we have one in Atlanta. So there was a time when we were a little bit behind on things, and it could take up to 10 days. They guarantee it within 10 days, but usually it's 3 to 5 days for people to receive the product. And then what happens is when you order it, you get texts from me, you get emails from me, you get a little video from me telling you exactly how to do it. And then you're going to get text from me telling you to get a hold of me and ask me questions and let me help you through this. Okay. So it's not like you get a product and you're just left like, okay, go do the system and I don't want to hear from you. No, I'm here with you, hand in hand, walking you through getting your health back. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm catching everything over here too. The T link, you guys got to go to my profile up here. If I put the link in onto never shows it, it hides it from you guys because but it's silly because the link is in my profile. They allow me to put it in my profile, but not in the chat, right? So if you just tap on my picture up above, there's going to be a big white box come up below. Tap on that again, you'll get to my profile. There are red light symbols under my picture in the profile. There's a link right below the red lights. Click on that. That's where you're going to get the tea and the fiber. Okay, so stomach acids, that's probably part of it. Psyllium husk and some food sensitivities. I had food sensitivities off the charts when I started. You guys, there was times when this was me, by the way. I'll show you some pictures, and this is a good friend of mine. Both of us, this is all we've done. But I had a thing called eosinophilic esophagitis. It seemed so far and away. It was like every single time I ate, my esophagus would close off, and I would, what I called choke. because it would get stuck in my esophagus. The food, the water, even water would get stuck, and it was painful for it to go through. Um, it was a buildup of eosinophils. Eosinophils are white blood cells, a reaction to allergens. Now, if I'm around like wood strippers and stuff, it can still happen. But on a daily basis, I don't have that issue. It used to be so bad that I had to sit next to a restroom when I would go out to eat, and I just stopped going out to eat because it would it would jam up, and then I would have to try and force water down to force this like plug through my esophagus, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, and then I'm left with an esophagus that's completely and it was so violent at times that it broke blood vessels in my chest and in my arms, and just it was crazy horrible. All of that has gotten better. Almost all of my allergies have gotten better. I moved to a new area, so I have some allergies to these trees out here. But other than that, my allergies and my sensitivities have gotten so much better by cleaning up my gut. It's not just about, for me, it's not just about getting the insulin levels down. The insulin levels will help your gut microbiome reset, but it's also about giving my gut what it needs to rebuild. So, there's that. Okay. Any, I know there was blood pressure. Is the person who asked about blood pressure still here? Do you still need me to talk about blood pressure? Is there anything else on this list that you guys need? I feel like I'm dancing. Boop. Okay. Is there anything else on this list you guys need me to go over? Arthritis, bone loss, wrinkles, psoriasis, acne, skin tags, dark skin patches, diabetes, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, migraines, muscle loss, bone loss. I do want to talk about that really quickly because and then guys, if you want me to talk about erectile dysfunction, if there's anybody or women who have a guy who has that, let me know. I want to cover that for you too. But just type a 1 in if you want me to cover some any of those things, or tell me what it is you want me to cover, and I'll try and go over it before I hop off here today. Cortisol. So cortisol levels, you guys do know that cortisol levels are driven by a number of things, which is a good lead in. Okay, so I want you to understand that although we have food that's causing these problems with our insulin, there are other things that can cause problem with insulin resistance. So if you had some type of trauma, if you've had multiple surgeries, if you had head trauma, if you have even psychological trauma from a narcissistic abusive partner, your cortisol levels are going up, and that can spike your insulin levels. And then now you add on that an imperfect food environment, and now it's just like this avalanche of disease and bad health. So cortisol levels, we typically think about, let's just talk about cortisol real quick. Cortisol is the hormone that puts you into fight or flight mode. So that's what's getting your body up and ready. So when there's danger, cortisol is up and increased, and it's like, okay, we're good, we're ready to go. Your heart is pumping harder. There's more blood going through your veins. You have more sugar. It's calling for more sugar to be dumped back into your bloodstream, so you have the energy to get up and do things. Okay, so cortisol can make insulin resistance worse, but insulin resistance can make cortisol worse. Because remember, now cortisol is coming out because you get scared, or you have something else going on. You're not getting enough sleep, and so your body needs energy. Your cortisol is up, but now so it's dumping more sugar back into your stream, but now insulin can't deliver that sugar, so now you have this roadblock, right, between cortisol and insulin resistance. They play off of each other. One can cause the other to get worse, so they work together in a positive or negative way. So, like I had head trauma when I was about 15, and we go back and look now and start to see where my health started to change. That was probably the beginning of my insulin resistance, and when my PCOS started to kick off, because I got hit in the head with a 12-pound shot. It knocked me straight the heck out. Okay, so that severe head trauma probably caused some of it. Your brain gets insulin resistant at the same time as your body does. So damage in the brain and damage in the body, they go back and forth. So you understand some of that. That's a very, very um, overview of it. So how bone density loss. Okay, so bone density, muscle density. Let's talk about that. If your body is insulin resistant, and we know that insulin is what's taking the energy to the cells of the body. So I want you to understand that every cell in your body, whether it's your hair, your teeth, your eyes, your eyelashes, your eyebrows. My eyebrows were almost gone 2 years ago. Yes, I have a little eyebrow filler on there, but my eyebrows were almost completely gone 2.5 years ago because everything was bunked. But it's taking energy away from the cells that need to grow. So for me, I've had 3 joint replacements, both hips and one knee, because I was so insulin resistant that my body was not creating um, the stuff it needed to stay healthy. So my bones were getting brittle and they were cracking. I didn't have any synovial fluid left in my left knee. I had ligaments and joints were bad. My legs, some people would ask me, like, I would take 3 steps and stop, and they'd be like, why do you do that? Well, because my knees would actually like slip out of joint, and I had to stand there for a second, because if you've never had that happen, it hurts like a mofo, and I'd have to like take a deep breath and like wait, and hopefully my knee would slide back into place and I could take a few more steps. So that all was happening because my cells were not getting the energy they needed to produce healthy tissue. So yes, this can affect your ligaments, your joints, your labrum, your meniscus, even the synovial fluid that goes in there. And it causes inflammation as well. And that inflammation is, not only is it not getting energy to those cells, but now it's eating up those joints. But for bones, when the bones can't get that energy in, they start to become brittle. Okay. Now there's a couple of other things that are happening. You're tired and you're hurting. So you're less likely to get up and do any weight bearing exercise. You guys, weight bearing exercise, especially ladies, as we age, we lose at a greater rate than men. It's so important for us to do weight bearing exercise. And I'm not talking about heavy weights. But like if you put a backpack on with 20, 30 pounds and went for a hike, that's some weight bearing exercise. If you use 5 or 10 pound dumbbells and do some light weight bearing exercise, it's going to help your bone density. Please do it and address your insulin resistance so the bones can get the energy they need. Now, muscles are very much the same. If your muscles are not getting in the energy, they're not going to be able to grow. And so what happens is, with insulin resistance, your muscle mass is decreasing, your fat mass is increasing. Now, when you have this kind of system going on in your body where your muscle mass is already low, but you have all kinds of fat, and you go on a regular calorie restrictive diet, you're losing more muscle to lose some fat. And then you're losing more muscle to lose some fat. Okay, so now in order to get your weight down, you've lost a whole lot of muscle. So muscle that should be up here is now lost because insulin resistance is causing that cycle. One of the things that's happening with the system that I use, the protocol that I just talked about, by the way, it's in my profile, is this. Because we're nourishing the body and we're reversing the insulin from the inside out, and we're allowing, with the intermittent fasting, for the cells to be able to take up the energy that they need, now we're having something different happen. So as we're on the system, our muscle mass is going up and our fat mass is going down. So some people will say, like I did, that I didn't lose any weight in the first month, and I didn't lose weight on the scale for about 6 weeks. But what was happening was I was losing size, so the fat mass was going down, my muscle mass was going up. I just texted my daughter the other day because I'm actually a little bit heavier now than I was 2 years ago, and I've been a little bit crabby about that, okay? There's other things going on. But I pulled out some pants and some shirts that I was going to give away because a year ago they were still a little bit snug, and I'm getting ready to move and I don't want to take all that stuff. But I put them on and they're loose. So I was like, why don't I listen to my own advice? Over this time, as I've continued to stay insulin sensitive, my body is naturally putting on more lean muscle that my body needs and lean tissue that my body needs, which is why I don't have to have a joint replacement on my right knee, but it's losing more fat. So although the weight on the scale is a little higher, it's because there's more muscle and less fat. And it shows in how my clothes fit and how my are. So that. Then do the skin tags go away? So yes, they do. I had skin tags all under my arms. I had them in my groin, embarrassing as heck. I'm a single grandma. Like there was so much going on. I'm like, I can't date. I just can't date right now because like it's just not pretty anywhere on my body. So the skin tags go away. They've all gone away from me. I have not one skin tag anywhere. Um, so here's what's happening with skin tags and also the skin discoloration. Two different things, but similar actions. Skin tags are created because you have an excess of a skin cell called keratinocytes. Now, those keratinocytes, when there's too many of them, and why? If I say that we're insulin resistant and our cells are resistant to it, there are some cells who are going to take up too much insulin, just like the fat does, in response to this. And they're going to just be like these little greedy little goblins, like, I'll take it, I'll take it, I'll take it. So the keratinocytes in your skin do that, but now they're overproducing. So those excess skin cells have to go somewhere and they poke out as skin tags on your body. When you become insulin sensitive, the need for those excess keratinocytes has gone down, so they're not overproducing, and the skin tags just kind of fade away. Like I had them growing on my neck right here and I couldn't figure out what was happening. Because I didn't know, I didn't like see them on my neck and on my underarms as much, right? But on my face, I was like, what are these little white spots starting to pop out? They're gone. I also had a really dark ring around my neck and I had melasma. So that's a different thing. So the melanin can in your body can be overproduced, and so it causes those dark skin patches, maybe on your elbows, your knees, and your groin as well. I was allergic to that call. That's what that was. I don't know. It was a spam call. That was my own inside joke. But my skin tags within 3 months were gone away. I have some people who've been on it for a year, and my assumption is that they had a lot more skin tags than I did. They're telling me that my tags are gone, but they still have a few. And so their skin tags have predominantly gone away. And there's also like how consistent you are and what kind of foods you eat and what else you do with the system to start addressing it, how quickly some of these things change in your body. With that, I want to say too that understand that everybody's body is different. So what my body needed and what your body needs are probably going to be two different things. So some people are losing weight really rapidly, really quickly. I was so sick that my body obviously was like, I got to address this, 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 and this. And, the weight can come when the weight comes, but I got to fix these other things first. So that's how I like to view it. Everybody changes at a different rate depending on what your body needs. Understand your body is innately intelligent. If we give it what it needs to thrive, it will thrive. But we have to give it what it needs to thrive and understand that what we've been giving it is not necessarily what it needs, what we like. So I'm not telling you either that you have to do any crazy diet, that you have to do anything that's like highly restrictive. I want everybody to, I was listening to another diabetes doctor, I can't remember her name right now, but she was talking about exactly what I'm talking about. I want you to do things that are sustainable, that you can stick with, and take it a step at a time. Don't jump off the cliff and do cliff diving if you've never even swam. Okay? Fix one little thing at a time. First, get the fibers in and the nutrients in, and then start making the changes to your diet as you start feeling better and can. Blood pressure. Okay. So, I think I'll be doing blood pressure again next week or the week after, but there's about 5 different ways that insulin resistance causes high blood pressure. And yes, 95% of high blood pressure is caused by insulin resistance. But I want to take it one step further. One of the leading causes of death in the world is cardiovascular diseases. 80% of cardiovascular diseases are linked to long-term hypertension. So when we come back this other step and say 95% of that long-term hypertension is caused by insulin resistance, if we address this one thing, how many lives are we saving in a month? There's 50,000 people a day that die from cardiovascular diseases. So let's dive into the 5 things. The number 1, remember I was just talking about skin cells and melanin and how your body, those cells will take up too much insulin in response to this overload of insulin in the body. Well, when we look at your blood vessels, there's layers in your blood vessels. The innermost layer inside your blood vessel is called the endothelium. And those endothelial cells are kind of those greedy goblins too. They're like, ooh, extra insulin. And guess what? They're sitting right inside your blood where it's carrying all the sugar. So insulin gets that sugar to carry it and unlock the cells. One of the cells that will take up too much are those endothelial cells. So they start to thicken. So an endothelium that's like this starts to come to be like this. Now what happens is inside that vessel, you have a space that went from this and now it's closed down to like this. So what you want to think about is with that one action where those cells are taking up too much of the energy and growing too thick, too big, you've now taken, think about a fire hose and the pressure that has to go through a fire hose. And now think about if you took that same water pressure and tried to push it through the size of a garden hose. Okay. So that pressure from the water hose being pushed through a garden hose, that's what's happening inside your vessel walls as that endothelium thickens. Now, there's also a chemical called nitric oxide that your body produces to help relax your blood vessels and allow them to open up and accept excess flow. With insulin resistance, that nitric oxide cue isn't happening. Now those thickened blood vessels can't open up and relax like they're supposed to. So again, the pressure is increasing. Insulin resistance is increasing cortisol. Cortisol is putting you in that fight or flight mode, which is causing things like increased heart rate, increased sugar in the bloodstream. So now you have these tiny vessels that are much smaller than they're supposed to be, and they're already struggling. Now you have cortisol come in and your blood pressure is slightly elevated. So now you have more pressure pounding at this small door, trying to get this blood through, and your blood pressure continues to increase. And then lipids. So we did, salt. Salt is the other one. So it also affects how your kidneys address salt. So your kidneys produce this chemical called aldosterone that helps with the salt. With insulin resistance, that aldosterone level is lowered. The kidneys can no longer off-let salt. This is why they say to be careful with salt when you're having high blood pressure, but I have whatever salt I want. I never measure it. I never care, because it's about the sugar, not about the salt. Okay, the salt is the end result. If you address the sugar, your kidneys can produce the aldosterone, it can offlet the salt and pee it out, and you're not having that excess salt in your bloodstream. Why? Now, if you, spell what, hun? I don't know which one what you want me to spell, but if you have excess salt being retained in your body, it's retaining excess water. Where salt goes, water goes. Aldosterone. Ooh, let me see if I can type it in here. Okay, so now your body's not getting rid of the salt, and so you're retaining more water, even more pressure on those tiny cells. And then here's the last thing. So the other thing that it does, and I'm going to give you guys a calculation in a minute, but insulin changes how your fat is translated in your body. So we think about triglycerides, we think about HDL, and we think about LDL, because those are the three that are on your lipid panel in your blood work, right? So we're going to take a look at if your triglycerides are high and your HDL is low, you're probably insulin resistant. Now, what those two numbers tell us really is all about your low density lipids. That's what's causing the cholesterol buildup in your bloodstream. So why? With low density lipids, and they don't really have a measure for this right now, you have this big buoyant type A lipid, and it's just kind of like a beach ball, kind of just like bouncing around on top of the water, just kind of floating along, not giving a care, not causing a problem. But the smaller type of LDL is more like a golf ball, smaller, denser. It sinks to the bottom of the liquid, and that's where the problem is. So now we're creating more of the type B LDL that's small and compact, and it's clogging up the arteries because it's dropping to the bottom of the vessel walls. I'm sorry, the vessels, and it's causing these blockages. So now you get some stuck, and then, like anything else, where you start to get a blockage, it starts to add more. So these LDL, small LDL B, are starting to build up in your system, and it's because insulin resistance is making these cues in your body to create more of this type B LDL than the type A, and now we have a cholesterol problem. Was it all about the fat? Nope. It was about the sugar all along. So insulin resistance and tendinitis. So those are 5 ways that insulin resistance is causing high blood pressure, and it's likely all the ways that helped me get over I was on dual therapy for my blood pressure, and I'm not on any medications. My blood pressure now is 112/74 every day. When I'm stressed, it can get up to like 124 or something. I think saw it 129/78 one day. But that's normal. That's a normal stress response. But at 59 and still at right around 200 pounds, 220, I do not have high blood pressure, which like flabbergasts doctors, like how, what's happening? Okay, so insulin resistance and tendinitis. Insulin resistant and have sudden onset of Achilles tendinopathy in both feet. Ooh, so is it tendinopathy or is it neuropathy? And so let's just talk in a big, broad term here. What I'm going to tell you, Tina, for me, knowing what I know now, because I had neuropathy and swelling in both feet. I was losing feeling in my right arm, which meant I was having heart problems, and nobody was catching that. Amazing, right? Right arm, high blood pressure. I have numbness and tingling. They did all kinds of scans for everything else, and nobody was like, oh, shoot, your ticker's getting ready to pop. Okay. So understand that, please. You guys, if you're feeling numbness, tingling in your right arm, and you already have high blood pressure, get it under control because you're in danger. Okay. So what I talked about with the cells not getting enough energy is where I'm going to relate this to the Achilles tendinopathy. If you're like, you guys need to move your bodies, you need to stretch, you need to give your bodies nutrients, right? Insulin resistance is not helping any of that. So I'm going to say, if you're not stretching and if you're just sitting all the time, that's going to be a problem. But if you add insulin resistance on top of that, now those ligaments are not functioning properly, or tendons are not functioning properly because they're not getting the right amount of energy in them. As it tendinopathy or neuropathy, remember also that your nerve endings are starting to have problems with this as well, because your nerve endings aren't firing properly. So now you get swelling and edema in your feet, and you get nerve pain in your feet and in your hands and a number of other places. What I would tell you, Tina, is this. For me, because I've done it with so many people when they come up and they say some random thing, especially my family and friends, and I'm okay, it kind of makes sense to me. I'm not the scientist. Like I said, I am not ever going to be claimed to be the scientist that Dr. Bickman is. But when I read all of his stuff, I'm more willing to say it's a food related disorder for most of us. And if food can fix it, then why not try the system and see what happens? If you try the system for 90 days and your tendinopathy is getting better, that would be a godsend, right? If you don't feel like your tendinopathy is getting better and you want to get your money back, you get your money back. In the meantime, you've helped build your health. That's what I would say. I tell everyone that, because really, when we look at 93% of us have a metabolic disorder, that means insulin is out of whack in 93% of us. That means almost all of us need to do something about this. So that's where I would go with it. Okay, guys, it's 9:30 and I have to hop on a call. So I'm going to be back at 8 o'clock in the morning. Cellulite, I am not an expert on cellulite, but where my mind just went, if I will share with you what my mind just thought of, okay? And then you guys can do some research and look at that. So when we have insulin resistance and we're storing excess fat, we're creating this system where we have all these fat cells, right? So that's part of cellulite. Cellulite is a connective tissue disorder, so it's not holding the fat cells in properly, and it's not smooth. So there's like this connective tissue that starts to get thin and stretched, and then you have these pockets where there's connective tissue that's strong and where the fat cells are kind of poking out. So where my mind went with that in my ADD moments are understanding how important fat and protein is. So if you're eating a diet high in sugar but trying to keep the fats down, what happens is those connective tissues that are holding your muscle and everything together is built up of fat. The fat in your cells is not fat it's not the dietary fat that's causing you to be fat, it's the sugar. So if you have a low fat diet and a high sugar diet, that I mean that to me would contribute. But again, that's my non-scientific, my little brain going in 100 different miles an hour way to explain what could be happening. There's tons of tools out there for cellulite, but yeah, um, too much sugar is actually causing that excess fat, and then too little fat is causing a reduction of the connective tissue that you need. But there are tools out there to help strengthen up and smooth out those tissues, and they work really well. Okay, guys, with that, I'm going to go hop on this call. I'll see you all at 8 in the morning, and bring your questions, bring your friends, and let's get everybody feeling better. Go to my link, check out the system, you guys. 90-day money back guarantee. I will help coach you. I will be there with you. Like, I'm going to hop on this call. So I'm there with you. I don't just leave you abandoned, and we get you your health back because I want everybody feeling as good as I do. All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you all later. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks, you guys.